The Atelier series is a special franchise that bravely ignores the save-the-world narrative of typical JRPGs to tell slice-of-life stories of young women striving to become alchemists, navigating personal friendships along the way. Adding a meaningful gather and craft system, charming music, beautiful illustrator-focused art, and a simple but effective battle system, and you've got a recipe for success. Through constant evolution of its ideas while remaining true to its core, the Atelier series is one that has captivated me in the past year and has made a fan out of me in little time. In this video I hope to introduce you to the modern Atelier games and hopefully give you an idea of where you might want to start your journey. From a simple menu-based crafting system to a full-on engaging minigame where you mix and match gathered materials to craft items with powerful traits, from a simple map and conversation system to fully 3D maps with gorgeous 2D art, or a simple turn-based battle system to an active time action adventure, the series is always evolving and changing up the formula. But put simply, the Atelier series is a group of cozy JRPGs that focus on slice-of-life vibes and personal journeys of young alchemists and their friends. Like a visual novel fused together by an engaging crafting and a simple but fun battle system. The Atelier franchise goes back to 1997, and since then there's been 27-something main games, 3DS titles, 4 spin-offs, some remakes, and a plethora of remasters. Luckily, we're only going to be focused on the modern Atelier games, which are all re-released on Switch, PlayStation, and PC, and includes 17 and soon to be 18 titles. As such, I will not be covering the older games like the PS1, PS2, or DS. Games in this franchise can be broken down into series, with new protagonists for each game, but set in the same world. So subsequent releases in the same series will feature reoccurring characters and nods to past events, but every game can stand on its own as its own title. Gus releases a ton of DLC and costumes and tweaks post-release, and eventually these titles get a DX version which includes everything. And lucky for us, entire trilogies of DX games are now grouped into a single release to purchase. For this video we'll be excluding the spin-off title Nelki, the remake of the very first game Marie, and the current series which is Yumiya and the upcoming Resiliana, which takes us down to just 4 series to talk about, each incredibly unique and special. This is what most people mean when they say modern Atelier games. I could easily spend a few hours doing a deep dive on each one of these 4 series, but the point of this video is to introduce them to you and answer which one might be the best to start your Atelier journey with. So I'll include a link in the description below of videos from a channel called the Kiseki Nut, who does a really good job at giving a full-on story and mechanics review/overview. That way, if you want to know a little bit more before jumping in, you can go ahead and watch those. 2009, it all started with the Arland Series. This was the transition of the Atelier games from 2D to 3D, and a reboot of sorts to bring the franchise back to its slice-of-life gameplay since the previous titles were getting a little off track and became too battle-focused. The Arland games are bubbly, cute, goofy, feature time management as a core aspect of their gameplay, and while technically a trilogy, Gus released a special epilogue-like game in 2019 as a love letter to fans of the trilogy who wanted just one more trip to the Kingdom of Arland. Each of the Arland games features a new young protagonist who is trying to become good at alchemy for themselves or to help others. The games are very much character event driven, and due to some time management system, would often require multiple playthroughs if you wanted to see absolutely everything. If looking at these pictures you feel that all these games are sharing a common aesthetic, you'd be right. Each series of Atelier games is illustrator driven, where the franchise producer handpicks a main illustrator to set the tone and feel of the entire game. For Arland, that monumental task went to Mel Kishida, known outside Atelier for his work on various light novels and the game Blue Reflection. His art style one could describe as moe with European influences, utilizing delicate line work and soft pastels and big expressive eyes, aka cute bubbly girls. The first game, Atelier Rorona, focuses on the clumsy apprentice and crybaby alchemist Rorona, as she is tasked with saving her atelier by completing tasks to prove the workshop's utility for the Kingdom of Arland. This game was apparently pretty strict with time limit management originally, but with some extra remasters and tweaks, the current game in its DX form is quite lenient, and you'll find yourself completing the main goal of the quarter in just the first few weeks, and then you have several months left to adventure, craft, and interact with different characters to build up your relationships and take on side quests and bosses. Time is not unlimited though, so it will take a little bit of mindfulness, but honestly the limit here is very tame and it helps to drive the narrative of the story, which is much more slice of life. The game has some intense battles if you get into the systems, and it helps solidify the idea that the main character as an alchemist is frail, so they fight on the back end while two companions take on the front. However, as an alchemist you can use items that you've crafted, and yes, those can get pretty busted, and the game encourages and enables you to do so. Ultimately, Atelier Rorona was a fantastic game and a great way to kick off the modern series. Just 1 year later came Atelier Totori, taking place 5 years after the events of the first game. Rorona has been traveling and teaching alchemy, and young Totori is one of those girls, although she's basically been self-taught since her initial encounter. She lives in a remote fishing village, and resolves to set to Arland to become a certified adventurer, just like her late mother, who she believes is still alive despite everyone believing her to have passed years ago. This game had a much stronger narrative motivation, and where Rorona was a real goofball and crybaby, Totori is more grounded and despite her timid nature is brave and adventurous. However, I must note that this is the one title that never got a Plus re-release, meaning that the DX version still has the strict time constraints as its original release, and they can be harsh. I found this to easily be the hardest Atelier game in the entire franchise, but super rewarding if you're willing to tough it out. Moving locations, gathering, battling, everything will eat up time, so management of it will be crucial in understanding that you can't do everything in a single playthrough. If you can get over that though, this game is a real gem. Finally, we have the third Arland game, which is Atelier Meruru. She's a princess in a kingdom neighboring Arland and is trying to prove that her newfound hobby of alchemy, which was introduced to her by her teacher Totori, can serve as a tool to help build her kingdom. This game really is the most polished game of the series, as it builds off the previous releases and includes a light but rewarding town building mechanic as well. The time constraint is very lenient in this title and is more there for narrative momentum, and yes, there is a reason why Rorona in this picture has been transformed into a child. And finally we have Atelier Lulua, which was released years after as a special follow-up game for longtime fans of the Arland games. It features Lulua, the daughter of Rorona, who wants to walk in her mother's footsteps. This is basically an Arland game but built with no time management and using all the new modern tech and ideas from the more recent Atelier games. Although it's a little bumpy around the edges, it's certainly a charming title for those who are big fans of the Arland trilogy and want one more final adventure there. Note that this title is not included in the DX Trilogy bundle. Overall, my thoughts on the Arland Trilogy is that while Rorona DX itself is one possible way to start getting into the franchise for sure, overall it's not necessarily the series that I would recommend you to start, although the games are super charming and fun. They can be quite bubbly, a little troopy, and sometimes includes art that makes you think that the illustrator had some pent-up emotions. But as with all Atelier games, the main protagonists are never involved in romances, and it remains a pure, although fan-servicey affair. As with all the games I'll be talking about, the music is phenomenal, ranging from cute to epic, and with all the trilogies, you can technically play them in any order and still be fine, but if you do play them in release order, you'll get the benefit of knowing all the in-jokes and references that are made, and the recurring characters. Now, Gust has been able to put out new games almost every year since the start of the series, so it didn't take long for the next entry, which would kick off a new trilogy, the Dusk Series. With a solid core established in the series as a crafting-focused, character event-driven, cozy JRPG, Gust decided to step away from the bubbly cute tones of Arland and go with a more melancholic and introspective atmosphere for its next trilogy, creating a fine balance of hope and hardship as the characters face a decaying world. The illustrator picked to helm the entire Dusk trilogy is an artist named Hidari, named aptly so because he draws with his left hand. No, he doesn't look like a piece of sushi, he just uses that image because he doesn't like to put his face out there. You might recognize his unique art style from games like Tokiden or Fire Emblem Echoes. Who better to pen the atmospheric world with his earthy colors, intricate costumes, and enigmatic characters? The first game in the series is Atelier Asha, a story of an herbalist living in a declining world who sets out to find her spirited away sister. While the game does carry the time management aspect of the Arland games, the scope here is much more manageable, and the story really focuses on character relationships. I found myself incredibly engrossed in the world building and unique atmosphere. It featured a new alchemy system that is a bit more in depth than the Arland series, which I loved, and the battles here have a really cool mechanic where you can move a character around the battlefield to behind the enemies that allow you to score critical hits, but you gotta be careful when you group your members because you can group them to do like group healing, but it also leaves them open to AoE attacks. Overall, after playing this many Atelier games, Asha is one of those ones that has really just stuck with me, and I definitely want to go back and replay it again now that I can truly enjoy and appreciate the atmosphere that it created. Following on the success of Aisha, the next title will be the first time in the series to feature not one, but two protagonists, and our first male playable character as well, with Eska and Laji. This game is often quoted as one of the best in the franchise, and for good reason. The time limit for in-game objectives is very lenient, and is mainly there for narrative reasons, and both main characters are incredibly likable and have great chemistry. You can see real character growth as they tackle the problems their department is faced with. Despite the gloom around the town, there is a real sense of hope and charm that is given, and the characters were so popular that it was even given a limited anime season, covering the main story of the game, so avoid that if you want to avoid spoilers. The third and final game in the Dusk trilogy would once again feature dual protagonists, two girls from very different worlds but both sharing the same nickname of Shally. In Atelier Shally, you can choose to play as Shalistera, a timid girl who is the leader of her people from a remote village that's been running out of water, or Charlotte, a dorky and energetic girl who lives with her mom and literally sweeps the streets of garbage and does all sorts of other odd jobs so she can help her house make ends meet. No time constrictions to worry about, this game serves as the final chapter of Dusk, bringing together all the characters from the past 2 games and featuring really just a polished gameplay loop building on the success of its previous games. As of this video, the Dusk series has not gotten a bonus 4th title, but I hope it does one day. The series is incredibly unique with a wonderful cast of characters and themes. While Aisha does have some time management themes that might frustrate some people, it's nowhere near as strict as Totori, and it really does a wonderful job of setting up the world. Eska and Laji is a fabulous entry to Atelier and is touted as one of the best of the Dusk games from an overall perspective. Shally I thought was really fun, having coming off the first 2 games and a satisfying end to the trilogy, but I really didn't feel that the 2 Shallys had that much chemistry, especially when compared to Eska and Laji. While not my first pick due to some real bangers following the series, the Dusk trilogy is a great place to get into Atelier, especially if you like the atmosphere and art style. Coming off Dusk, Gust had the idea to bring back the uplifting and cheerful tone for the next trilogy, with colorful art and a crafting system that encouraged creativity. The result is my favorite series, the Mysterious series. Every time Gust departs from the main vibe for experimentation, they come back to their roots, and it strikes a good balance that encourages new ideas and new fans, while satisfying longtime fans as well. The Mysterious series focuses heavily on the crafting aspect, and really started playing with the idea of what an adventure could be, with materials and monsters changing depending on the time of day, and a system where you'd learn new recipes through discovery. To bring this series to life, franchise producer picked Noko as the lead illustrator. Her style is popish, features clear lines, pastel gradients, and very stylish designs. She created the world's environments and main cast, but Gust had a really interesting idea here, which is to get a second main illustrator for the Mysterious series, which was Yugen. He has a very unique art style that feels almost watercolor, using a glazed layered technique with low opacity brushes. He was in charge of Plakta, one of the main characters with a mysterious origin, as well as some of the other NPCs not from the main town. He would take over as the lead artist for the second title, and the finale would be a mix of both Noko and Yugen designs, a unique and wonderful setup to make this series stand out. The first game released was Atelier Sophie, following a young alchemist who encounters a talking book called Plakta. As Sophie discovers new recipes and writes them in the book, Plakta slowly regains her memories of who she is. The game is almost purely character event driven, and so it's very cozy and chill paced. With new change of weather mechanics and a radically new alchemy system in which you have a grid and each material was represented by Tetris-like blocks and colors on the board, placement and order could lead to some very interesting outcomes and trait fusion. Sophie shows its age a little bit in the graphics department, but is still as charming and fun as ever to play. For the next title, it was time to take on the idea of an expansive world for an adventure instead of a single map zone that you select and go to. Welcome to Atelier Ferris. The game features Ferris, a girl who lives in a closed-off mining town who has never been outdoors. She dreams of going outside, and after a chance run-in with Sophie, she discovers alchemy. She sets out with her older sister for an adventure, If she can get the blessing of several licensed alchemists across the lands and make it to the main town for an exam, she can become a licensed alchemist. While there's a timed objective, it's purely for narrative reasons, and the second half of the game opens up without any limits, so once you clear the main story objective, there's still tons to do. Ferris is my favorite protagonist in the franchise, and her adventure was an absolute joy. The endgame content also features some really tough bosses and lots of high-tier crafting. This game still followed the same type of grid-like system that Sophie invented, but really came up with some new ideas to tweak it a little bit more. This would be perfected in, you guessed it, the third and final entry to the Mysterious series called Atelier, Lydie and Sul. This is hands down my favorite Atelier game so far. This game features dual protagonists, which is the twin sisters of Lydie and Sul, who live with their father and want to make their family Atelier something special. In this game you can simply swap between the two girls at any time, and the mystery element of the game is the discovery of magical paintings that the girls can enter, leading to an array of different worlds and characters that they can meet. It's like they just told the artists to go crazy, and the results really show off their creativity. As the finale, it features characters from the past games, and the overall tone is just flat out hilarity.
ねえ、お父さん。ひょっとしてお金使った？
いやー、どうだ
てやー。
I can't tell you how many times I laughed out loud or almost choked on a snack I was eating because the dialogue was so funny.
私はイルメリア・フォン・ラインウェバー。超一流の大天才錬金術。スーちゃん。どうしたの？あなたたち大丈夫？
They smooth out the edges of the previous games, and everything here is just near perfection. I say near perfection because of the next game, which is Sophie 2. As a special anniversary title, they released a bonus title for the Mysterious series, much like they did for Arland with Lulua. This game technically takes place after the first game, Atelier Sophie, but in a magical world where time periods mix, so you don't need prior knowledge of the Mysterious series to enjoy it at all, and you get to adventure with the ancient human form of Plakta, and even Sophie's late grandmother, who is in her 20s. Sophie 2 is hands down the best entry point for the franchise. It's absolutely gorgeous, has a wonderful adventure system with weather differences and environment puzzles where you'll be altering the weather to get past obstacles, and a recipe crafting system that is so rewarding to unlock new recipes, and the best synthesis crafting system the series has ever seen. Overall, my thoughts on the Mysterious series is that of pure love. I got into Atelier after playing Yumiya, and I was curious about the more traditional turn-based and crafting-focused games, so I picked up Sophie 2 and fell hopelessly in love. I then went and bought the Mysterious DX trilogy and played each one of those before moving on to the other series. Sophie shows its age a little bit, but is charming and cozy and fun to play. Ferris, your mileage will vary depending on whether you like open maps or not, but I love the game to death, and Lydie and Sul is just my favorite game, but one I feel that is best played after you play the previous two titles. Sophie 2 is my recommendation for anybody interested in the franchise, as it represents everything in the best possible way and works as a great entry point despite the number 2 in its name. Having perfected the crafting, focused, and turn-based battle system, Gust once again got brave and experimental, and this paid off with the franchise finally making its break into the West with Atelier Ryza. They just recently announced that the DX Trilogy Pack will be coming out later in 2025, so obviously I'd recommend waiting for that. If the name of the game doesn't make it obvious, Ryza was such a popular character that she's the main protagonist for all 3 games of this trilogy. It was time for Gus to flex their modern game development muscles and buff up their production scope with larger open worlds, action-time battles, and a more streamlined alchemy system. The focus of the series is very much a slow burner, slice-of-life summer adventure with Ryza and her friends. To helm the art for the series and the man responsible for possibly one of the most well-known pair of thighs in modern gaming, Gus chose Toridamono as the main illustrator. As you can see from his art, it emphasizes the physicality of characters to give a real sense of realism and aliveness. As Ryza will tell you a million times, she's just an ordinary girl from an ordinary town with an ordinary life until one day she and her friends stumble into alchemy. The rest is history, as they say. The first game has a notoriously slow intro that might turn off a lot of people. Something like 6 hours or so before things really start to open up, so go into it with patience. Once it does, the game seems to hook anyone who plays it. The battle system not being turn-based will throw you for a loop if that's what you're used to, but after several hours that will start to click in as well. Life is stressful as it is, so having a slow burner game with good vibes and a colorful palette really hits all the marks. This is the last game to have English audio. The past games all had English as an option, but they didn't voice nearly as many lines as the Japanese, and I found the performances kinda hit and miss, so I've always just played these games with Japanese audio and English subtitles, and I kinda recommend that you do the same, especially because this is the new norm for the series going forward. Now, Ryza was so successful that the sequel was the first direct sequel for a trilogy with Ryza 2. This game is often touted as the best Ryza game in the trilogy, and so good that Ryza 3 almost had no way to live up to its quality bar. I, of course, am waiting for the DX version later this year to play the game for the first time. Ryza travels to a royal capital to investigate a mysterious phenomenon connected to alchemy, and as with the other Ryza games, the rest just follows. Fans love the characters from the first game after having such a long, intimate adventure with them, so this game taking place 3 years after the first game as a direct continuation, you really get to see the characters mature and change. The open world, which started as more of an experiment in the first game, was really polished for the second game, and everything just clicked. It took a few years to cook, but Ryza 3 followed after. This time the game takes place 1 year after Ryza 2 and brings the cast back home for one final adventure with higher stakes and serves as the big emotional payoff for the journey over the past 2 games. Featuring more cinematic storytelling and even bigger narrative stakes, Ryza 3 is a game I've yet to play but generally seems very well received, although very much in the shadow of the stellar Ryza 2. My guess is where Atelier games used to be a very slice of life, this dip into a more cinematic storytelling is what led the latest series, Atelier Yumiya, to feature an almost Breath of the Wild open-like world with puzzles and fast action and, actually really uncharacteristic of the series, actual villains. I feel bad for not having played the Ryza trilogy yet at the time of making this video. I was planning on doing it, but they just announced the DX version, so dabbling in Ryza 1 is the extent of my experience. But I think it goes to show that while Ryza is the most well-known Atelier game, it's not the only way to get into the franchise. Since the Ryza games are all connected narratively, much more than a previous series, the recommendation here obviously is to play them all in order. Ryza 1 is the first game for many players who entered the series, and the only reason why I recommend Sophie 2 over it is because 1, I don't have experience with Ryza 1, and I also found the onboarding part to be pretty sluggish, and I do hope that they make some tweaks to that in the DX version later this year. And that covers the 4 modern Atelier series. Again, my recommendation is to start with Sophie 2, then get into the Mysterious Trilogy DX collection, but honestly, any of these trilogies can be a great way to start the franchise. Rise of 1 if you want to get the most modern of the games, and like a slow-paced, relaxing, cozy game, and when the series has its hooks on you, then I'm sure you'll go and enjoy the Arland and Dusk series as well. Currently, there is a new game called Atelier, which is an even further departure from the old school format to give an open world narrative driven game. This was actually my entry for the franchise. I loved it, and you can try the demo. It's free, and I can say that the demo is very representative of the final game, so once you play it, you'll know if you'll like the game or not. Just know that this is another experimental series, and Gus knows this. So to balance things out, a new game called Atelier Resiliana, the Red Alchemist and White Guardian, will be coming out this September 2025, and while it uses the fabulous graphics and mechanics of the now shut down in the West gacha game, it's a true return to the series' roots, with turn-based combat, crafting being more in-depth, and it even features Totori from the Arland series, Willowbell from the Dusk series, and Sophie as playable characters. It is truly an exciting time to be an Atelier fan. I hope this video was insightful, and I really hope you give this series a shot. There's a lot of different flavors of Atelier to choose from, and I love that the developer Gus has remastered all these modern games so that there is so much to play. Let me know down in the comments if you do pick up any of the games and how you like it, or what your favorites are if you've already started the series and are a fan. Hope you all enjoyed this video, and until next time, happy synthesizing.